Hey guys, I'm Phoenix Gray, and welcome to LitRPG Happy Hour, where I sample LitRPG and alcoholic beverages. Feel free to drink along if you dare. Today, I'll be reading a sample of Battle Spire, a crafting LitRPG book, 100 Kingdoms Book 1 by Michael R. Miller, and I'll be playing a game called Character Attack along with it, where I will take a shot anytime a character attacks a monster or another player. If you want to follow along, pause this video and download a copy of the book sample at the link, or you can just drink whenever I do. As a disclaimer, I do not read every book that I drink to. This is all for fun and to help spread the word about LitRPG and these awesome books. Having said that, let's get started. So today I'm going to be taking these Licks shots that I picked up at the liquor store. It is a vodka kamikaze mixed shot. At first I was a little worried because it's kind of cloudy, but apparently it's supposed to be like that. It says it's made with real fruit juice, but we will see. So anyway, let me see. I just scrolled way too far on this book. Chapter 1. For most people, I reckon nearing the end of finals eases the grisly knot of tension in your stomach. For me, it only tightened the knot further. You see, my real test was still to come, and by the end of this weekend, I intended that my life would never be the same again. But first, I had this damned exam to finish. I glanced up from my answer to check the clock in the corner of the exam terminal screen. 1 minute left. Only one glorious minute. Returning to my final answer, I pressed the turn icon to take a new page, frantically scribbling with my chrome stylus before the page finished loading. My aching hand scrawled out the last words, slipping here and there from the strain of the last 3 hours. Genetic engineering had been a ball ache of a course, but I'd reached the end now. It would stand me in good stead and get me a grad job, or so everybody says. If I passed, that is. But I'd pass. I had made certain of it by studying day and night for the last 6 months. After I'd nearly flunked out last semester, I didn't have much of a choice. With 2 seconds to spare on the clock, I pressed in a period to finish my answer. A clinical-sounding ping rang across the hall, followed by low grunts and sighs of relief from my fellow students. I caught the eye of my buddy Lucas nearby. He made an exhausted fist pump into the air and then became more animated as he mimed throwing back drinks with both hands. I smiled back and feigned a similar motion, though I had no intention on following through on that this evening. I had my own celebration planned. A message blinked onto the middle of the monitor. Time's up. Zentech University hopes you've had a pleasant evaluation today. Please reconfirm your identity to proceed. A box outlined in red appeared to the side of the message, large enough for my whole hand. I placed my palm onto the screen and the scanning process began. Out of well-practiced habit, I also looked to the lens on the monitor so it could double-check that I really was who I was supposed to be. As if to triple confirm, it brought up my student ID, horrific picture and all. There I was, all 18 and spotty, hair lank and ungroomed across my face, hardly dashing. Still, my eyes looked brighter back then, all hopeful idiot that I was. Oh, and my younger self was a lot thinner, too, before the beer and takeout weight had taken its toll. The prick. At least the monitor was happy about it, flashing excitedly. Confirmed. Jack Cross. Congratulations on completing your examination. We hope to see you at the 2053 graduation. Zentech hopes you have a nice day and a party-filled evening. Cringy corporate communications aside, I don't think I had felt so giddy in years. Better than waking up on Christmas morning 7 years ago to get my first fully neural interfaced VR headset, a Noir Dome 1160X model. It was a piece of junk now, but the rented model I had stowed away in my backpack probably wasn't much better. In my eagerness to escape the exam hall, I jumped to my feet too fast and earned a dizzying rush of blood to the head, but anticipation for what was to come vanquished the knot in my stomach. Maybe this feeling was even better than that kiss with Clara Denson back in sophomore year, which was a worrying thought as that was one of my more cherished memories. I'm not great with girls, as you might have guessed. Nor was I supposed to jump into a game for at least another 6 months if I wanted to win that bet with my parents. I'd played Myth Online a bit too much the previous year. Huge epic adventure, forming guilds, slaying bosses, and getting sick loot. What's not to love? I loved it a little too much and was on the verge of being kicked out of college when I had a wake-up call. I guess I got a bit obsessed. Happens to the best of us, am I right? So I sold my VR headset, a Cryoscope 520G. God, it was the shit. And knuckled down. Even told my parents I was voluntarily quitting. They didn't believe me, so I made a bet with them. If I stayed off gaming for a whole year and smashed my final exams, they'd help me buy my first car. Just the fact that I'd be getting out of my room delighted them more. Go for a run, they told me. Get some fresh air in you, that'll see you right. In hindsight, I should have made the time limit 6 months. Then I'd already have made it. Oh well, I was going to sneak a little in anyway. I had a plan. I naturally ignored my family's suggestion that I go for a run. Shocking as it might sound, I wasn't one for running. But right now, leaving this exam hall, I was approaching something dangerously close to a jog as I wove through the crowd, the hubbub of post-exam relief rising all around me. Jack? Lucas was calling after me, but I hurried on. If I could grab my bag before he got out, I could dash for the hover tram and make my getaway without any awkward interrogations. He's one of my roommates, and my family drafted them all in to make sure I didn't break the terms of our agreement. The others wouldn't bother so much, but Lucas had a giant crush on my sister, so he would play kiss-ass. It was real rich of him, now I thought about it. I never once told his family about how he spent all his book money on pot during our first week. All in all, this meant the apartment would be a no-go for my weekend of gaming. Perhaps my dash for freedom had been a bit of a giveaway. Never mind. I arrived at the storage unit outside of the hall, somewhat breathless, and leaned on the counter for support, drawing in embarrassingly large gulps of air. I really ought to work out more. I'd say I'll start properly after this weekend's experiment, but who am I kidding? After picking up my bag, I made my way toward the exit. Excuse me, I grunted as I tried to negotiate a throng of people blocking the glass doors. They may as well not have heard me. Sorry, could you move, please? No dice. I tried to kid myself that I'm a confident person who projects his voice. It's moments like this that bring the fantasy crashing down. I resorted to a good old-fashioned shoulder barge to squeaks of protest, but no matter. I was out and was greeted by the bright sun over the Bay Area. It was one of those rare hot days in San Francisco when you can really smell the heat, you know? That sort of mix of sunscreen and sweat, when everyone's face is hidden behind shades. The kind of hot weather that brings out all the best-looking girls and gives the gym bros an excuse to take their shirts off. And here I was about to lock myself into a dark room for the rest of the day. I couldn't wait. I slung my bag over my shoulder and started to move, heading towards the hover tram terminal at the edge of campus. As I approached, the tram pulled in, and I really did run this time to hop aboard. I didn't feel like waiting 15 minutes for the next ride north. The way I jumped through the closing doors was almost heroic. Quickly scanning my palm to charge my account, I looked for a place to sit. The only seat left was one on the west side of the carriage, where the sun was beating in through the window. I sat down, bag slumped between my legs, and tapped the window to bring up the shade filter controls. I selected medium, darkening out the world. It would take a while for the tram to reach its most northern stop, and then I'd have to change onto the old Powhide cable car line for the last leg of my journey. The Tenderloin wasn't an area I'd usually visit, never mind plan on staying for 2 nights, but it would offer me the reclusive setting that I desired. Hell, everyone knew about the sordid VR salons that littered the area, and while I wasn't planning such activities, the single-room occupancy joints were amongst the few places left that still took cash in hand without asking questions. Anywhere else, even a low-key motel, would likely want my palm print or simply get my identity from their security cameras. Not a bad thing for the most part, except that I couldn't leave a record of where I was if I wanted to pull the wool over my family's eyes. Not that they were regularly checking up on me or anything, but I like to be thorough. Call me excessive, but I like to find detail. It's why I enjoy delving deep into an RPG, figuring out the best path, tweaking the talents and stat numbers to be just right, theory crafting weird new builds to gain an edge over others. I just wish I knew more people in the real world who understood that. My immediate family still saw it as a stigma, yet the rise in esports was allowing people to make legitimate careers in gaming, like any football or baseball player. I bet you anything that I'd be making serious cash doing it, like the top MOBA and Battle Royale players. Then it would have been an entirely different story. It wouldn't have been a stupid waste of time then. No. It would have been me working really hard. If you're asking why I don't just shoot for those top-paying spots, the answer's simple. I've not got the reflexes to play competitively. I enjoy a shooter or MOBA like anyone else, but I'm just not quick enough. I'm at my best when I get to sit back a bit, plan things out, and take my time. Play the long game, if you will. In Myth Online, I played a utility class and acted as the guild leader. I organized the raids, and yes, I admit it, screamed at people down voice comms for not doing their job. Looking back, I can appreciate why my roommates found it worrying. Still, I refer back to my main point. They didn't get what I was doing. I've seen coaches here on campus screaming blue bloody murder at their team during a match, and nobody pulls them up for it. And we all know that there are bosses across the country shrieking in boardrooms right now. So what if I loudly told the idiots who died over and over again in the Elder Dragon's deep breath attack to go screw their own moth? Well, you get the idea. The basic point is this. If I can make money from gaming, then no one will call it wasting time again. They'll call me hardworking, and what's more, I think I know how to do it. Chapter 2. You might be wondering why I'm so hellbent on making some money out of playing this new game. It can't all be to prove a point to my parental overlords, and you'd be right. Truth be told, I doubt I can make loads, but anything that can help to make a dent in my student debt wouldn't go amiss. I've racked up $250,000 in tuition fees from Zentech. Ivy League schools are supposed to be worth it, right? So, what's my plan? Well, it's to start playing the scavenger class in the new virtual reality massively multiplayer online game, 100 Kingdoms. You'll have heard of 100 Kingdoms, of course. It only came out about a month ago, but in case you've been living under a rock, or are like my sister, I'll run over it again. 100 Kingdoms is the big new thing, being hailed as the game changer for the VR MMO gaming, the way that World of Warcraft was for classic MMOs early in the millennium. Sure, there have been some great VR MMOs already, but 100 Kingdoms seems to have struck gold, bringing in both hardcore and casual players alike in droves. It's been estimated the game has 15 million players worldwide and is growing every week. An advanced AI runs the show, which some people have called a waste of good tech, mostly politicians who want to build smarter robots to kill people with. The most important thing is that in-game gold can be exchanged into dollars, and vice versa. Now, it used to be that companies would go to any lengths to stop gold sellers in these sorts of games, but I'm sure you've heard of the 1920s prohibition. You can't completely stop people from getting what they want, and if you can't beat them, then sell the goods yourself. Players can go to Frostbite Studios' online store and purchase a token which they can redeem inside 100 Kingdoms for in-game gold. But that gold isn't just generated out of thin air. That would lead to some crazy hyperinflation. No, it's the players who have amassed legitimate in-game wealth who are free to put up their gold for a token and take a share of the profits. Frostbite carefully monitor and adjust how much the gold is worth, meaning the amount of money needed to buy 100 gold goes up and down based on supply and demand. At the launch of a new game like this, many hardcore players who are pushing for world first rankings are willing to spend a bomb to get an early edge, but the amount of gold generated by players isn't huge yet, as people haven't had time to farm it. It effectively means that the in-game gold is strong against the dollar. If you have a lot of gold in the game right now, you stand to make a pretty penny. Going forward, the system will still allow those who like to play the auction house in-game to do well for themselves back in the real world. With any new frontier, there is money to be made if you can discover where to make it. Enter me in the scavenger class. A soft ping-pong noise emanated from the speakers overhead, pulling me back to reality as the tram pulled into its next stop. The doors opened, letting in hot air from the outside, and a shuffling of people then ensued. Jolted by the noise and bustle, I shook my head to fully wake myself up. Out of habit, I decided to check the leveling leaderboards of 100 Kingdoms. I pulled out my phone, and with a few quick taps, the leaderboard appeared. I had been checking it regularly since the game's release to see how far behind I might end up during exams. Not too far, as it turned out. While most people bemoaned the fact that it had come out in April, right before exams for many students across the country, I'd been glad. 100 Kingdoms had been scheduled to come out before Thanksgiving, but there had been an attempted hack which delayed its release, granting the developers time to beef up security. Frostbite Studios hadn't confirmed what the digital thieves had attempted to do. Most people assumed the attackers had tried to find a loophole in the game's economy system to plunder it for quick cash upon release. Whatever the case, 100 Kingdoms had launched in April, meaning I wasn't so far behind. Had it been released on schedule, I wouldn't have been able to play, as that was when I'd made the bet and started to focus on my studies. I would have had to try and resist jumping online for 6 months rather than just one. That would have been cruel. The leveling leaderboards had become one of the most watched pages on the web these past weeks. Frostbite Studios had offered in-game vanity awards and titles to the first 100 players who reached the top cap of 50. Shockingly, a few had made it so far. Only 24 players in the world. The rankings on the leaderboard were calculated by using time played, while also factoring in the number of deaths and a weighting based on the player's chosen class, with certain classes deemed to be easier to level than others. Since I checked last night, the board hadn't moved an inch. Leaderboard 1. Legolas, High Elf, Ranger, playtime 10 days, 3 hours, 34 minutes. Number 2. One-Shot Master, Orc, Ranger, playtime 10 days, 5 hours, 14 minutes. Number 3. Pyropotter, Gnome, Mage, playtime 10 days, 7 hours, 47 minutes. Number 4. Azrael, Undead Human, Death Knight, playtime 13 days, 14 hours, 3 minutes. Number 5. Scrub Slayer, Minotaur, Berserker, playtime 10 days, 10 hours, 50 minutes. Number 6. White Noise, Vampire, Mage, playtime 10 days, 12 hours, 34 minutes. Number 7. Long Tusk, Troll, Ranger, playtime 10 days, 15 hours, and 50 minutes. The board carried on much the same until the end. Mostly a bunch of rangers and mages who had extremely little downtime while soloing in the world. It was Azrael who impressed me the most, as he'd taken longer than most on the board, but as his class was considered harder to level, he'd secured 4th place. Very impressive stuff. There were absolutely no scavengers on the board. Barely anyone had chosen to play that class. It was a bit of an oddball, all looting and crafting items from what they'd found, just as the name suggested. Lots of utility in the items they could make, apparently, but they were meant to support others, not dish out sexy damage numbers or take punishment like a tanking class. The reason I was interested in them was for the economic branch of their talent choices. Ostensibly, they were for players who wanted to roleplay their way as a merchant or traveling trader. I'd also be rolling as a regular old human character because they had a racial bonus which gave them 10% off items bought from and sold to NPCs. That's non-playable characters. It's not such a grand plan when you boil it down. I'd be making a human scavenger because scavengers were the best for everything in-game that was gold-related, and humans had a small boost to their trading. Hardly stellar, min-maxing, but there you have it. Some items were selling for hundreds of golds right now, including crafting materials. Arcane crystals fetched as much as 1,000 gold because they were used in the making of the best current in-game weapons and armor, those items that were prized by the top guilds who wanted an edge for sponsorship deals. There was one sale on the auction house that had found its way across all the commentary channels, an item called the Orb of Deception that had been put up for auction during the first week of the launch and went for over 10,000 gold. I'm not sure what the real-world value of that transaction would have been, but I'm positive someone sunk a ton of money into getting that much gold so early on in the game's life. I didn't expect to achieve such feats in a single weekend. I'd need to invest some playtime to set up my character, level it, gather gold to buy the crafting tools that I needed, reach the capital city and the other sundries of beginning a new game. Still, I planned on being relentless this weekend, and if I could make a few $100s worth of gold, then I reckoned I'd be onto something. It should be enough to convince those around me that I wasn't wasting my time, at least. Once they accepted that, I could go ahead and try all the other classes out too and just have fun. So that was my plan in a nutshell, and honestly, I couldn't have been more excited by it. Out of the dimmed window of the hover train, the cityscape began to change. Sleek modern buildings that weaved metal, glass, and organic materials together gave way to the cramped brickwork buildings of the old city. Streets narrowed, 5 lanes moved into 3 and then 2. The buildings weren't as tall here, yet they seemed to block out more sunlight, and I dialed down the filter on the window to compensate. My fellow passengers had changed as well, from students to workers. Soon they were replaced by older denizens of the inner city, wearing frayed, ill-fitting clothes and displaying brands that had gone bust during the crisis of the early 40s. I was closing in on the last stop on the line, and it was like traveling back in time. A lot of folks who'd been caught up in the downturn 12 years ago still hadn't escaped it. My parents had just about managed to, but no more. You can imagine why they lavished praise on my doctor of a sister, Julie. Scholarships galore for her, but not for me. I had built up a debt instead, and while they smiled and said they were proud, they couldn't quite hide the flicker of nerves about the mounting bill. Sure, I'd applied for loans and got them, but if I keeled over dead tomorrow, then it'd be my parents who'd have to foot the bill. Weird system, right? Most debts get written off with bankruptcy or death, but a student loan? That shit will haunt those who you leave behind. One saving grace had been my course choice. Genetics these days was a lot like computer coding had been 40 years ago. It was starting to be used by pretty much everybody, but not enough people were highly skilled in it yet. It wasn't glamorous, spending countless hours in front of a screen tapping out sequencing. Despite what the media will have people believe, you can't rebuild your whole body the way you want to. There's only so far that you can go manipulating your own personal coding before things get royally effed up. You can make your jaw more defined, but you can't go from a rounded mess to chiseled in one fell swoop. You might be able to make yourself grow an extra inch or two, but not much more before things get dangerous. Other body parts may be shrunken or, as is more often done, enlarged. But honestly, you can't always tell the difference between the before and after photos. Everyone has a slightly different coding, so there's only so much that can be done. There are no cookie cutter builds for people. Real life isn't a game. Real life has limits. It was wear and tear. It's reality where those who win at the genetic or social lottery get an unfair advantage over everyone else. Sometimes skills, brains, and effort will get you where you want to go, but there are no guarantees in real life. Games just aren't like that. No developer in their right mind would have every player start with randomly allocated stats, with some people starting as gods and others as runts. It'd be unbalanced. It wouldn't be very fair. That's why I prefer games. Technology had reached a stage where living in the digital sphere was fast becoming a real possibility. Virtual reality gaming would be the great democratizer of life. Another ping pong from the speakers was followed by a droning beep. We have reached our final stop where the service terminates. Everyone got to their feet, heading for the opening doors. After packing my phone back in my bag, I shuffled onto the platform with everybody else. But whereas most of the people around me looked downcast or tired, perhaps going to or coming home from work, I was smiling. Before dark, I'd be in 100 Kingdoms at last. Chapter 3. By 6:30, I was standing outside my destination, the Paradise Hotel on Turk Street. The irony of the name couldn't have been blunter, although the smashed glass of an upper window gave it a good try. Being early evening, the streets were packed, and I gripped the handles of my grocery bags tightly, as though fearing imminent robbery. It wouldn't be sunset until after 8:15, but I admit I was glad to be heading inside, where the promise of a room with a locked door awaited me. I wasn't that deep into the Tenderloin, being close to what most considered to be its southern border, Market Street. But I wouldn't say I was brave or used to this, nor would my scrawny frame do me any favors here, and I was probably being incredibly prejudiced against the folk who live in these parts. An ear-splitting crack rent the air. Next thing I knew, my legs had powered me up the steps and into the Paradise Hotel. That been a gunshot? My heart was thundering again, and I tightened my grip on my shopping bags. There weren't any sirens blaring. Most likely it was just a backfiring car. Man, I was on edge about this. Maybe I should have just bolted the door to my bedroom shut and hoped for the best. Damn Lucas and his fawning over Julie. He'd rat me out the moment that he realized I was playing. Well, I was here now. No good turning back. I walked up to the reception, or what passed for a reception. It was more of a large hole in the wall with a reinforced steel shutter. Not a promising sign. There was an actual, honest-to-God, brass bell on the counter that looked like something you'd see in an old movie. I tapped it and it rang rather daintily. Nobody came. Perhaps I'd picked the wrong spot. I'd researched as best I could and found this hotel to be a frequent haunt of gentlemen with specific virtual reality needs. Basically, the internet connection was good enough to hold steady during a digital orgy. It was a sign of my desire to get into the game quickly that I remained where I was and rang the bell again. And again. And again. A determined gamer won't be stopped, I tell you. At least I had the forethought to grab supplies from a megamart before hopping onto the cable car, hence the big brown bags. I'd munched a Choco Nut protein snack as the old rust bucket had trundled northeast up Market Street. Okay, fine, I ate 3 of them. With bags full of protein-rich bars, meals to be rehydrated, energy drinks and bottles of water, I should be able to proceed as planned with minimal breaks. If I could get a room, that is. I rang the bell again. At last, something answered, namely a swinging door that was somewhere out of sight behind the reception area. The door crashed against the wall, and heavy footsteps padded their way in. They belonged to the heavy-set, middle-aged dude lumbering into view behind the counter. He was entirely bald on the top of his head, but the sides and back were tangled in overgrown black hair. A bulbous nose sat between small but shrewd eyes, and his brow glistened with natural oils. He wore only a thin white vest covered with sweat patches over coarse chest hair. I couldn't see below the counter, but I prayed he wore at least something in that region. Hang on, he grunted, then began pressing at buttons that I could not see. An air conditioning unit whirred to life, blowing up his messy hair. None of the cool air reached me, unfortunately, and my palms remained positively slippery as I continued to grasp at my grocery bags. Christ, that's better, the landlord said. He returned his focus on me, giving me a dirty look and running his eyes up and down me. Here for a room? What else would people come here for? I thought. Yes, please, I said, unable to hide my nerves. The landlord gave me a grin worthy of the fattest of cats. I got room 36 free. How long you want it? 2 nights. With an option for a third, if possible, I added hastily. I reckon that's possible, said the landlord. Cash or palm? Cash. 200. I didn't dare to haggle. Sure, hold on, I said as I began rummaging in my bag for the cash. I hesitated in handing it over. Can I get a lock on the door? All rooms come with a lock. Does it work? He scowled. Do you think I don't take care of my place? No, not at all. I was just... You want it or not? Yes, here. Resigned, I handed him the money. He counted it out twice to be sure. Hand over your bag. Need to check what's in there. Fearing I may never see the bag again, I passed it over. The landlord brought out a metal detector, which immediately wailed. I won't have weapons in my hotel. It's not a weapon. It's a VR headset. He scowled again, unzipped the bag, pulled the Vision Escape 360 headset, and dropped it roughly on the counter. Honestly, it would be a miracle if the thing still worked at this point. The landlord sucked in a breath through his teeth. Seems in order. He pushed the headset halfway across the counter to me and then stopped. Internet connection? That'll cost extra. Something about his smirk told me he was lying. Paying for ultra-speed internet hadn't been a common thing since the turn of the decade, and while it was true that not every district of the city had stable and free connections, I knew this guy was taking me for a ride. Even if I'd had the balls to question him, I'm not sure I would have. I was itching to get upstairs and get into 100 Kingdoms. Perhaps the landlord could sense my unease, and the slight twitch I had developing in one eye wasn't aiding my cause. How much? I asked meekly. 400 all in. You've just doubled the price. 500. My jaw fell slack. He chuckled. None of my business what dirty shit you're into, kid, but I'm guessing you're here because you don't have anywhere else to get your jollies. He sniffed theatrically. You want to be online without interruption, so if you want your kit back and a room, pay it before I add on any more. A mixture of anger and dismay flared in my cheeks. If I didn't give him the cash, he'd close his steel-reinforced shutter, laugh, and take my possessions for himself. Fine, I said in a low voice. I presented the extra money, and he handed back my bag and headset. He followed it up with 2 keys. This one's for your room, this is for the bathroom. Room 36, 3rd floor, internet password is on the key-ring. Now scram. I scooped up the keys and made for the stairwell. If I'd had a tail, it would have been between my legs. It was dark on the stairs, with only a couple of narrow windows high up and no light switches as far as I could see. The air was close and humid, and after the second flight, I had to pause to cough and catch my breath. That's when I heard a humming coming from above me. I discovered the source of the noise was another middle-aged man, only he was the antithesis of the landlord, with a body like a garden rake. The smell of booze was strong even at this distance. The man stumbled as he crested the top of the stairs. Falling to his knees, he simply laughed. Whoops, let's try that again, he said before pulling himself up. Tentatively, I continued up the stairs and emerged onto the 3rd floor. The drunk had collapsed about halfway down the corridor, still humming. I stepped quietly as I could to check the number on the closest door, though I feared my huffing and puffing would give me away. I passed number 42, 40, 38. Hey, hey, the drunk said. He was flopping around like a beach seal, pointing a long finger at me. His eyes fell on my grocery bags. This is such a good service. I was needing something to eat. My eyes fell to my toes as I silently drew up before room 36, placed my bags down, and fumbled with my keys. Hey, you, the drunk slurred. I'm talking to you. How come you won't look at me, eh? The keys rattled loudly as I tried to place the right one into the lock. In the dim hallway, it was hard to tell which was which. In my panic, I dropped them entirely. God damn it, I muttered under my breath. What's that? The drunk said. He was stumbling upright now. Look, just give me my stuff and we'll call it even. I scrambled for the keys, managing to fit the correct one into the lock this time, and turned it. I could hear the man heading for me as I pinned the bags awkwardly between my arms and bundled inside the room. A bony hand snatched at my side, and I heard paper tearing. Over the threshold of the room, I turned, and a few Choco Nut bars slipped out from the hole in one of my supply bags. Instinct took over, and I kicked the snacks out into the corridor. The drunkard leapt after them like a dog chasing a stick. Heart pounding, I closed the door and looked for the lock. At least this thing was state-of-the-art. A black box ran up from the handle, and once I activated it, a series of small metallic beams began interlocking with a connecting device on the doorframe. Short of cutting through the door, nobody was getting through that. My shoulder slumped at the thought. I hadn't realized how tense I'd been for the past couple of hours, and I had aches in places that I didn't even know could ache. I unslung my backpack and put the market bags down carefully, so as not to let any of the cans of energy juice fall out of the ripped one. Once satisfied there would be no explosion of the sugary beverages, I finally took a proper look at my abode for the next few days. It didn't take long to drink it in. A match in a matchbox might have complained about the space. There was a small single bed, a chip mirror above a sink that may once have been white, a filthy set of blinds drawn up above the window, and an air conditioning unit that looked about 15 years out of date. It was sweltering in here, so I moved to switch the cool air on. Broken. But of course, I opened the window as wide as it would go instead, and returned to sit on the bed. It was hard and springy, and singularly uncomfortable. With a sigh, I reached for one of the bottles of water, taking a large and much-needed gulp. I'd just been threatened for money and chased for food. Might even have heard a gun go off, too. What a night. Time to crack on with it. First, I connected both my phone and headset to the Wi-Fi. I started with the headset because it would need time to patch any client-side updates to 100 Kingdoms that might have come. The bulk of the processing power was handled by the Frostbite servers, and the headset was more like a giant phone that you dialed in on to play. It also meant that you had to lie down and enter a state of near coma to interface with the virtual world. The headsets were still like old gaming consoles and always had to be plugged in. This was partly to eliminate the risk of power failures, as a sudden shutdown could cause nasty side effects. There hadn't been any incidents from VR headsets for many generations of the tech, but no company was confident enough to try running the thing by battery power alone. With the Vision Escape 360 plugged in, connected and patching, I turned to my actual phone. I bashed in the password to access the Wi-Fi and the screen blazed with notifications. My mom, Dad, and Julie had all sent me their luck before I'd gone into my exam, and then congratulated me when it was over. My mom had sent some follow-ups trying to wring info out of me about how it had gone. I felt a twinge of guilt for the deception I was playing, but it passed. Never once did they encourage Julie to stop playing her saxophone or spend less time training for the swim team. They'd been so many 5 a.m. wake-up calls for my mom and Dad to take her to the pool before school without complaints. There'd been so many 5 a.m. wake-up calls for my mom and Dad to take her to the pool before school without complaints, whereas I'd got a stern warning after just missing dinner a few times because of a virtual raid night. Didn't seem fair in my estimation. I'd show them what I could do, not to put extra pressure on me, but this experiment with the scavenger class really had to work. I was already down $500 from that greedy asshole of a landlord. He'd taken advantage of me because he thought I was a pushover and, alright, I am. But he just knew it instantly. I was tired of not having confidence, of not having respect. Now that I was safely behind my locked door, I started to feel angry. Anger at him, anger at my family who simply didn't accept me for who I was and what I wanted to do. 2 days. In 2 days, everything would be different. And with this bolstering feeling fueling me, I took one last glug of water, pulled on the Vision Escape 360, and lay down upon the bed. Chapter 4. It's hard to describe the feeling you get when a headset induces the mental state that's required to interface with your mind. I'm not a physicist or neurologist, so I'm not clear on exactly how it works. But suffice to say that it's able to induce a near coma-like state by using a special wave frequency. When you want to log out and wake up, the headset slowly dials down the intensity of the signal, gently easing you back out of it. Assuming nothing goes wrong with that process, it's completely harmless, and it's less dangerous than giving someone a general anesthetic for surgery. You don't feel a thing going down. As you drift off, the light fades, leaving you in pitch black for a moment until a whirling night sky spins around and every color and strands of light spiral outwards like the stretching coils of a galaxy. And then a menu pops up. What would you like to do? Browsing, shopping, education, gaming, TV or movies? Or TV/movies. I'd gone through this whole process countless times before, but experience it for the first time in over half a year was disorientating. Luckily, the feeling passed as I selected gaming from the menu, reaching out with my new digital hand just as I would in the real world. Plenty of people these days were using virtual reality for more than gaming, including trying on clothes with highly personalized avatars and then getting those clothes delivered. And rather than simply sitting on your couch to watch a film, you could watch it in a themed cinema experience where all the weather effects, impacts of the action, and even the taste of the food the characters ate could be stimulated for true immersive viewing. Hitting the gaming button brought up the names of all the companies who are running VR games. Currently, Frostbite was at the top of the list due to its current prominence. I selected it and entered my account information for 100 Kingdoms that I'd set up a few days ago. Somewhere in the virtual landscape, a trumpet sounded. Authentication successful. With that, the menu faded away. The spiraling galaxy collapsed inward upon itself, and the title screen for 100 Kingdoms rose to dominate my vision. I'd seen the sequence many times from Let's Play videos, but it was another matter entirely to experience it for real. It was more of a login area than a login screen, and truly unlike any game that I'd ever played before. I was inside what I can best describe as a study room atop a white stone tower, only it wasn't your usual study. Spellbooks were strewn around, half opened or in tall stacks upon high shelves. Cauldrons sat over low fires with bubbling pink and blue liquids inside them. A weapon rack was also there, lined with different staffs, each topped with a unique gemstone, and directly before me, hunched over a gnarled desk and peering intently into a crystal ball twice the size of my head, was the wizard. He looked like a classic mage should, with a thick gray beard and dark robes. Everyone called him the wizard because you couldn't see if he had a name like a regular NPC, but he had enough personality that everyone was sure the AI controlling the game world was more involved in it than most. The wizard looked up at me and frowned, as I'd seen him do to the lucky players who had gotten here before me. Ah, he said, his voice dripping with a wise knowing. Another lost soul seeks a vessel to call their own. Approach, child, and we shall discover your destiny. I stepped forward, feeling the same rush as I might in the real world when excited, and here I'd be able to see, smell, and feel exactly as I would in real life, albeit with the pain doled right down to meet legislative guidelines. As I stood before the great crystal sphere, its misty innards started to churn wildly in anticipation. I see greatness in you, child, the wizard said, yet there is much you must learn, and you are but one in a much wider world. There will be challenges you cannot overcome alone, no matter how powerful you may become. Fellow adventurers will be your only way forward. Trust in them or use them as you may. It is up to you to decide. Now, let's look into your future. He looked theatrically into the crystal orb, and I guessed I was to follow suit. Sure enough, a faction of selection menu appeared. The menu was being projected up and out from the orb like a hologram. Each faction had their own cinematic intro, which I could watch by clicking for further detail. I knew I was going to play a human, which would be part of the Imperium, but I couldn't help but get sucked into the detail anyway. Choose your faction. The Imperium. Demons may fall from the sky, the ground may break, but the Imperium shall live eternally. A grand alliance of all races committed to peace, learning, prosperity, and devout faith. Yet in these dark times, such noble pursuits may have to be set aside, and fire and sword raised in its stead. Faction trait, the ties that bind. Standing firmly shoulder to shoulder, each member race of the Imperium feels secure in the territory of their allies. Effect, you will begin the game with reputation status of honored, with each primary faction within the Imperium. Races, humans, dwarves, gnomes, elves. Unique classes, paladin. The great tribe, from harsh deserts and deadly jungles, from deep caverns and caves on the mountainside, the mighty beast races have set aside their pride and formed a formidable front. Deeply rooted to the world and nature, the great tribe fights to preserve their ancient customs, environments, and beliefs in a world rapidly descending into chaos. Faction trait. Home is the wild. Spirits of the ancestors watch over you wherever you go, providing comfort even in the hardest of places. Effect. The well-rested experience bonus will accumulate no matter where you log off from in the world, but will only last for 10 minutes, as opposed to the full 20 minutes gained from an inn. Races. Orc, Troll, Minotaur, Furblog. Unique class. Shifter. The Dark Council. Banished, cursed, exiled, and hated. These misunderstood creatures have suffered long enough. Bound by a pact of mutual support, the Dark Council vies for survival in a world that would gladly see them burn. Faction trait. Molded by the night. Whether by their nature or necessity to avoid persecution, members of the Dark Council feel strongest where the light is lowest. Effects, +3 night vision skill, +10% shadow resistance. Races, undead, vampire, werewolf, Valkyrie. Unique class, Death Knight. To help me decide, I was able to drill down through various levels, checking out summary details on each racial trait, the faction-specific classes, everything. Some races, like the elves, had sub-races, wood elves, dark elves, high elves. There was so much here. I could have spent ages investigating every last scrap of it, but I was on a bit of a timetable. Hopefully I would have plenty more time to explore it all in the future. I selected the Imperium as my faction. I hope you are true of heart, said the wizard. He looked me over discerningly with his brow furrowed. You shall have your work cut out for you, for the Imperium is under threat from the outside and within. But to which allied race will you hail? He looked impressively towards the crystal orb again, spinning his hands and chanting. Another menu appeared for me, this one containing more granular detail on each race of the Imperium. As I scrolled through the options, the crystal ball whirled, showing images of each race in their starting area. Choose your race within the Imperium. Note, all players will receive +3 stat points to distribute themselves each level, along with another +3 stat points predetermined by their class. Human. Stats. No bonuses or negatives, recommended for new players. In a world filled with races of incredible natural strength and fortitude, or devastating willpower to master magic, humans hold no such distinction, but it will be their enemy's downfall if they see them as weak. Humanity, the backbone of the Imperium, leads the way in the Alliance, bringing their more disparate allies together for the benefit of all. Racial trait. Silver-tongued. Charisma, diplomacy, and gold coins can often achieve what whole armies cannot. Effect, +10% earned when selling items to NPCs, -10% from the price when buying from NPCs, +10% to all reputation gains. Available classes, Rogue, Ranger, Mage, Warlock, Paladin, Priest, Warrior, Berserker, Monk, Scavenger. Dwarves, Dwellers. Stats, +5% Constitution, +5% Might, -4% Intelligence, -3% Reflexes. Hailing from their strong home inside the mountains, the Dweller Dwarves are the proudest and most stubborn of their kin. Racial trait. Stone is in my blood. Stone is in me blood. It is said that dwellers used to give their most beautiful women to mate with earth elementals in order to keep the peace deep beneath the mountains. Whether this is true or not, it is undeniable that dwellers have an uncanny instinct for all things mining, prospecting, and blacksmithing. Effect. Reduced materials required for all blacksmithing recipes, +10% chance to gain bonus ore from mining. Available classes, Shaman, Paladin, Priest, Warrior, Berserker, Scavenger. Skyborn. Stats, +4% Constitution, -2% Might, +4% Intelligence. Whether from adventuring or exiled lineage, these dwarves were born on the surface world and prefer adventure to a life in darkened tunnels. Racial trait. The road well traveled. Roaming all areas of the world has opened the minds of the Skyborn and brought them closer to the latent powers that their dweller cousins have forgotten. Effect, +5% to all elemental damage. Available classes: Rogue, Ranger, Shaman, Paladin, Priest, Warrior, Scavenger. Gnomes. Stats: -4% Constitution, -4% Might, +6% Intelligence, +3% Reflexes, +4% Willpower. Ingenious, crafty, tenacious. The denizens of Gnomeland have crafted a technological answer to almost every problem. Though logic and engineering are valued above all else, they are still eccentric at heart. Racial trait: larger tool belt. It is said each gnome can rewire a mana capacitor before they can walk, though this has never been verified. Effect: reduced materials required for all engineering recipes, +5% power to all items created from engineering. Available classes: Rogue, Mage, Warlock, Priest, Warrior, Scavenger. Elves. Wood Elf. Stats: -3% Constitution, +2% Intelligence, +7% Reflexes, -3% Willpower. From the lush Dunbar Forest and the grimier woods of Golden, these smaller elves are as deadly as they are crafty. Racial trait: Deadeye. Master Bowman. It is said armies can be slain between their trees by unforeseen archers. Effect: +3% damage dealt by bows, +3 bow skill. Available classes: Rogue, Ranger, Mage, Warrior, Berserker, Monk, Scavenger. High Elf. Stats: +2% increased mana, -10% Constitution, -5% Might, +6% Intelligence, +5% Willpower. Venerable and wise, the High Elves prefer living in open valleys or coastal regions in order to magically direct water to plumb their fine villas. You're more likely to find a library than an armory in their towns, but the spells within them leave such crude measures redundant. Racial traits: ley lines. Over millennia, the High Elves have charted the magical veins of the world. Where it is stable enough, they have learned how to make use of these highways. Effect: as a High Elf, you may teleport from one ley line connector to another. Cooldown: 24 hours. Available classes: Mage, Warlock, Priest, Monk. Dark Elf. Stats: +3% Constitution, -4% Intelligence, +3% Might, +6% Reflexes. If they have a place they call home, no one has left it alive to tell the tale. At times they have joined the Wood Elves to resist impositions from their High Elf brethren. They serve the Imperium these days, and the Emperor sleeps easier for it. Racial trait: smoke on shadows. Never send a master assassin to do a Dark Elf's job. An Imperial proverb. Effect: +2 dagger skill, +1 sneak skill, +1 night vision. Available classes: Rogue, Ranger, Warlock, Warrior, Scavenger. After I'd finished reading through all the racial information, I was desperate to double back and read everything on the members of the Great Tribe and Dark Council. This game was enormous, but my choice was clear. I'd done my homework after all. I went ahead and selected human and chose to be male. The notion of gender flipping raised my eyebrows, but I didn't much fancy the idea of batting off the weirdos who try to flirt with me, either for real or for roleplay. I was then taken to the character customization section, where an image of a default human model stood before me, ready for sculpting. I could import a pre-made avatar that looked almost exactly like myself, taken by ultra-high-res, three-dimensional scanning booths. It's the type of avatar people needed when shopping in the virtual space. Most people had one these days, myself included. Part of me wanted to delve into the various customization options, maybe giving myself anime-style white and black hair, detailed tattoos stretching across my chest, and an infinite amount of options besides. But time was of the essence. In the spirit of urgency, I imported my pre-made avatar and made a few quick alterations, making myself a couple of inches taller, slimming my waist, broadening my shoulders, and removing all the blemishes from my face. I clicked accept, and the idealistic version of myself appeared. Don't judge, alright? Everybody does a bit of digital cosmetic surgery. Ah, the wizard said again. Humans are a versatile race, capable of greatness in most aspects of life, but not quite the masters of any. Now, we must delve deeper still. What type of human are you to be, I wonder? Choose your class. Note, classes may further develop through specialization choices, talents, hidden quests, and in-game events, yet you must discover them for yourself. Rogue. The classic sneaks and thieves. Rogues love the art of stealth, poison, and working quietly to get the job done. They may not hit hard, but they know where to slip in their knife to make it hurt the most. Key stats: Might, Reflexes. Primary role: Damage. Secondary role: Utility. Class benefits: +2 sneak skills, +2 sneak skill, +2 dagger skill, +2 one-handed sword skill. Ranger. Unlucky foes will fall before they even know what's hit them. Rangers are unmatched in aim and utility when it comes to firing on the move. Key stats: Might, Reflexes. Roll, Damage. Class benefits: +5% damage will all ranged weapons. I think that was with all ranged weapons. +2 bow skill, +2 one-handed firearm skill, +2 two-handed firearm skill, +2 crossbow skill. Mage. A lifetime of knowledge would never be enough to master the arcane arts. Each mage commits to try nonetheless. Key stat, intelligence. Roll, damage. Class benefits, plus 3% increase to mana, plus 5% increase to spell power. Warlock. Many in the Imperium would throw warlocks beyond its boundaries, but enough at the top recognize there is a need to understand what your enemies are capable of. Calling upon demons and fell magic for aid, warlocks are second to none when it comes to controlling the state of others. Key stat, intelligence. Primary role, utility. Secondary role, damage. Class benefits, plus 10% increase to health, plus 5% increase to shadow damage. Paladin, soldiers of the light. Paladins vow first and foremost to protect the weak and uphold what is righteous. All members of the Dark Council fear these zealous defenders of the Imperium. Key stats, might, intelligence. Rolls, tank, healer, damage. Class benefits, plus 2 two-handed mace skill, plus 2 one-handed mace skill, plus 5% damage dealt by holy magic. Priest. Whereas their paladin cousins train in the arts of war, priests focus on their spiritual essence to channel the power of the light in its purest form. Humble men and women, priests serve others, first and foremost, using their connection to the light to cause harm only when they are pushed beyond all other measures. Key stat, willpower. Rolls, healer, utility. Class benefits, plus 5% to regen per second, plus 5% effectiveness to all healing spells. Warrior. Whether defending others or fighting on the front lines, warriors are always first into the fray. Highly disciplined, they let opponents tire themselves out before striking with precision. Heavily armored, they will outlast most opponents. Key stats, constitution, might. Rolls, tank, damage. Class benefits, plus 3% increase to health, plus 2 shield skill, plus 2 to all one-handed melee weapon skills. Berserker. Discipline doesn't suit the Berserker, armor just slows him down. Key stats, might. Roll, damage. Class benefits, plus 5% increase to melee damage, plus 2 to all two-handed melee skills, plus 2 to all one-handed melee weapon skills. Monk. Extreme inner discipline helps train monks to dispel pain or hit far harder than they should. Favoring their fists and feet over blades, these fast-moving fighters can quickly change from dishing out punches to bolstering the spirits of allies in the heat of battle. Key stats, reflexes, willpower, rolls, damage, off-tanking, utility, class benefits, plus 30% increase to unarmed damage, plus 5 unarmed combat skill, plus 2 regen per second. Everything I read was tempting, with so many possibilities. I found what I was looking for at the end of the list. Scavenger. They flit from town to town, battlefield to battlefield, gathering the remnants and then crafting wonders from the ashes. Some just call them junkers. A mysterious sort and often overlooked, scavengers forge their own path more than most. Although weak in combat, they make up for lack of raw power with powerful creations and upgrades of their own. Key stat, intelligence. Role, utility. Class benefits. Whereas other players are locked to only 2 primary professions, scavengers have access to 7 blacksmithing, leatherworking, tailoring, jewel crafting, engineering, mining, and skinning. The core stat linked to all the professions is consolidated into intelligence. There was a line in the description that stood out to me. Scavengers forge their own path more than most. With access to so many profession trees, I had an inkling as to why. Everyone badmouthed the class because it had only 1 or 2 combat abilities and was weak enough besides. Yet with the capacity to create so many items and improve them, smart players would be able to carve out their own playstyle. I'd like to think I was such a player. I selected the scavenger class. The wizard chuckled. Oh, you will be one who takes what others have foolishly neglected, build where others destroy. You won't be powerful in your body or the arcane, yet power can come in many forms, and gold is perhaps the most influential power in the world. And if not gold, then it should be your wits that will serve you, an intuition to combine and use materials in ways that no others would, for this is the life of the scavenger, to thrive on the outskirts, to turn the waste of others into your own treasures. He made it sound almost romantic, and I suppose there was something uniquely cool about the fantasy behind the scavenger class. I hadn't come across something like this in any other RPG I'd ever played. Although I was here for a task, I was excited to find out how my character would ultimately play. The wizard pushed a piece of parchment across the desk and followed it with an inkwell and quill. The last task will be to decide upon your name while in the mortal plane. I await your decision. I skimmed the flowing words, beautifully written out as though in calligraphy, but they held no role-playing value, just a list of the conditions required on naming a character. Don't be offensive, don't be racist or rude, don't, in a nutshell, be an asshole. I'd been thinking about what I'd call myself for a while now, and had checked on the 100 Kingdoms player roster to make sure it was still available. This was to be a new beginning, and after some time I'd landed on the name Zoran. It was a name from Eastern Europe that meant dawn and felt fitting. Plus, a name beginning with C would help me to stand out in a busy game market square, easier to remember than Instant Kill 2038 or Jawumba Waffles McGee. I picked up the quill, dabbed it into the black ink, and wrote out my character's name. As I confirmed it, the game presented me with my character's starting stat sheet. Character, Zoran, human, scavenger, level 1. Attributes, Constitution 10, Intelligence 10, Reflexes 10, Might 10, Willpower 10. Combat, Health 100, Mana 100, Attack Power 17, Spell Power 17, Regen 1.3 per second. It is an honor to meet you, Zoran. The wizard waggled his fingers, and the parchment rolled up and zoomed to his hand. I wish you luck in the world. You'll need it. And with that, the wizard snapped his fingers, and the world around me began to spin again. I was greeted to more concept art and voiceover work by way of a loading screen, all specific to the human starting zone. It lingered for a time upon an in-game clip of a tall yet plump man in regal purple robes and a jewel-encrusted crown upon his head. He had the thick brown beard of a scholar, but his hair was already thinning beneath his crown. His green eyes were soft and inviting, and it was evident enough from his frame that his shoulders were rounded and slouched under those robes. A voice clip spoke over the scene like in a movie trailer. Emperor Aurelius grew up in peaceful times, pursuing the path of the philosopher rather than the warrior. However, storm clouds gather on the borders of the Imperium. Elven allies speak of demonic and undead horrors from the south, while the dwarves warn of giants stirring in the north. Closer to home, kobolds have become an infestation right outside the gates of the Imperium capital of Argatha. The scene progressed to show the Emperor sitting in a heated council meeting, his face buried behind his hands. Aurelius is a soft-hearted ruler, and now the vultures are circling. If his words should fail, the Imperium might splinter into pieces, leaving humanity vulnerable to the many evils rising in the world. Now more than ever, the Imperium needs willing citizens to take up arms for the sake of all who dwell within it. The cutscene ended, and I materialized into the game world. Chapter 5. I knew where I was. This was Rusking, a small town where human players would begin their journey in 100 Kingdoms. Around me were buildings that could have been pulled straight from 16th century Europe, thatched roofs and all. Directly before me was the town hall, with a pointed wooden spire rising far above the rest of the settlement. Human architecture in 100 Kingdoms often had spire motifs, paying homage to the grand imperial spire in the heart of Argatha, where the emperor lived. I took a moment to flex my fingers, stretching my limbs, and get a feeling for the movement in-game. Felt flawless. Frostbite had really taken it to the next level here. I could smell bread from the bakers, hear the rhythmic clang of hammer on metal from the smithy, feel the breeze upon my face. Immersion was further aided by the minimal user interface. A semi-transparent red health bar sat in the bottom left of my vision, and a blue mana bar beside it. Both sharpened and brightened if I focused on them, and I saw both were sitting at a basic 100 of 100. In the bottom right-hand corner was an area earmarked for the combat log. In other games, bringing up the menu was simply a matter of thinking about it. I tried this now. Even knowing 100 Kingdoms was the hallmark of modern VR MMOs, I was still taken aback by the speed at which the system responded to my thoughts. Using abilities worked the same way, meaning that combat would be fluid and exciting. From the menu, I checked my abilities book. I knew broadly what Scavenger started with from my research, but I wanted to double-check the specifics. My abilities book looked sparse right now. There was, in fact, only one ability present. Scavenge, rank 1. You search a corpse for additional items that others were too proud to take. Awards 5% of the experience that killing a creature of equal level and power would grant. Some corpses may require tools to fully search. Shame. I thought the experience game would be a bit higher than 5%. Perhaps it had been patched. Still, it would add up over time and be a nice boost to my overall experience. I had no direct combat abilities right now, but Scavengers only got a few anyway. That wasn't what they were designed for. My stats wouldn't have changed from logging in, and I wouldn't have any additional points to distribute until I leveled up. I was, however, curious to check whether I already had this myriad of extra professions already, or whether I'd have to train in each one separately. I found the Professions tab and opened it. Professions. Class note. As a scavenger, your profession trees are locked until you visit your class trainer at level 3. Crafting locked. Blacksmithing rank 1, 0 out of 0 XP. Leatherworking rank 1, 0 out of 100 XP. Tailoring rank 1, 0 out of 100 XP. Jewel crafting rank 1, 0 out of 100 XP. Engineering rank 1, 0 out of 100 XP. Gathering locked. Mining rank 1, 0 out of 100 XP. Skinning rank 1, 0 out of 100 XP. Sure enough, I couldn't select any of my professions. When I tried tapping on blacksmithing, all I got was a clunky noise for my troubles. The game's way of telling me that I couldn't do that. Well, I always had to do a bit of leveling anyways, no harm done. I just visit my class trainer as soon as I hit level 3. Finally, I inspected what gear I had equipped. A green commoner's tunic, brown hose, and basic leather shoes, all of which gave me no additional armor or stat bonuses. In my right-hand weapon slot, I held a brittle dirk, which had a damage range of 3 to 5 and a shockingly low durability of 10. Upwards was truly the only direction I could go in. I rubbed my hands together. Time to get started. Doing the starter quest seemed the obvious thing to do, as they'd award some copper and silver coins that I sorely needed to buy the various tools for crafting and scavenging. I'd need a hammer for blacksmithing, a needle and thread for weaving, a knife to skin animals with, that sort of thing. My research had also gleaned that an early quest could be gained by speaking to the mayor inside the town hall, so in I went, skipping merrily up to the mayor as my anticipation built for the adventure to come. The mayor was dressed like some 19th century gentleman of leisure, with a heavy blue coat over a frilly dress shirt and capped with a dark top hat. His cheeks were rosy and he smiled broadly. "Ho hum," the mayor said jovially. "New adventure in rusking, is it? Might you be of assistance in our time of need?" His eyes quickly scanned me, taking me in all my noob glory. "Can I be of any help around town?" I asked. My voice sounded exactly like my own in here, too. If you're wondering how players are supposed to know what to say to an NPC, such as the mayor, don't worry. AI in previous games had been good enough at imitating real life that the one running 100 Kingdoms was state-of-the-art. I could probably sit and have a conversation with the mayor on how best to make an omelet if I wanted to, although I suspect even his jolly character would eventually tell me to piss off and make myself useful. The mayor sighed in extravagant relief. "Yes, indeed, young sir. Our town is beset by troubles, although I fear my citizens will distract you from the main issue of the day, kobolds." He blustered and shook a meaty fist for effect. "Damnable kobolds infesting the woods and causing all manner of mischief. I'm in need of adventurers capable of facilitating their removal." I smirked. "I believe I can handle this task." "Excellent, young man. Go forth and slay those pests. For rusking!" Quest accepted. Into the woods. The mayor of Rusking is deeply troubled by the kobolds in the area. Traders have reported their wagons being attacked on the way in and out of town and believe the kobolds are hiding in the woods. You've agreed to investigate and slay the enemies you find. Objectives: investigate Rusking Wood. Slay kobolds, 0 of 15. I couldn't help but smile. My first quest in such a long time. I'd missed this feeling, and I hadn't even got to the good stuff yet. Without delay, I left the town hall and brought up my map by mimicking opening a scroll in midair. A roll of parchment materialized into my hands with a stylized map of Rusking and the surrounding area for my perusal. I appeared as a small golden arrow in the middle of the town, the point of the arrow indicating the direction I was facing. Exact distances weren't shown, nor were any quests marked. You had to use your brain in this game, which was just the way I liked it, but it was easy enough to find Rusking Wood, as it was labeled in scrolling letters some way to the north of the town. Also upon the map was the server time and clock, illustrated by an animated sun and moon. It was 8:21 p.m. server time. Luckily for me, the US servers were set to Pacific time due to Frostbite Studios being based on the West Coast. Server time was useful because having a set time to schedule around made it easier to coordinate with guildmates spread across different countries. All maintenance and resets were also on the server time, so they would stay at a constant time for all players. Night was now fast falling over the town of Rusking. That might make this quest more dangerous for me than it needed to be. The sky looked to be clear, so the moon and stars would help. Still, I wasn't playing a fighting class, and any disadvantage I faced while being out in the woods wasn't ideal. But there was nothing for it. I snapped the map shut, the scroll fading away into the digital ether, and began my journey north. Characters in 100 Kingdoms had a base movement speed that was akin to a light jog, only this time I didn't feel out of breath doing it. Other games I'd played had employed a stamina bar or a similar resource drain if you ran, and you could make your character fitter over time. Frostbite had decided to brush over this, focusing on other aspects of gameplay. This suited me just fine. My time was precious enough without having to stop every few minutes to recharge a stamina bar. Passing out of town, things got a lot darker without the ambient light from buildings or the watchmen with lanterns. I referred to my map to check that I was still heading in the right direction. The parchment of the scroll was just visible, as though it had a backlight effect. Not far to go now. Indeed, looking ahead, I could make out the treetops as black canopies against the starry night. When I reached the tree line, I slowed to a walking pace, being careful not to go crashing through the undergrowth and alert a pack of kobolds to me. Being so weak, I'd have to take them one at a time for now, and if I managed to get the jump on one of them, then all the better. Scavengers didn't have proper stealth or ambushing abilities like rogues did, but the game did reward players who were able to sneak up on an opponent nonetheless. Wearing heavy armor while clambering through the woods, for example, would make more noise than if you were in lighter garb. A heavy plate-wearing warrior was unlikely to ambush anyone for good reason. My knowledge of this quest from Let's Play was hampered due to the darkness. I knew there was a camp not too deep into the woods which would complete the exploration segment, but my difficulty in seeing anything clearly was making it far harder. Crouching low, I moved as quietly as I could from trunk to trunk, from bush to bush. After about a minute, I was awarded a notification. It appeared in my central field of vision, semi-transparent and unobtrusive like my health and mana bars, but if I focused on it, it became clearer. Sneak unlocked. Level 1. You tricksy rascal, trying to take someone by surprise? You'll need to get a lot better than this. The unlock was welcome, but the real game was knowing that I must be close to some kobolds, and had so far evaded detection. I closed my eyes, focusing on the sounds around me, trying to hear my enemies. Hooting owls and the gentle rustle of the forest obscured most sound, but I soon heard a twig snapping not far to my right. When I opened my eyes, I found I could see a little easier. Night vision unlocked. Level 1. Afraid of the dark? You should be. You'll need to keep eating your carrots. The tone of these notifications was certainly on the lighter side. 100 Kingdoms didn't spell out how you could unlock and advance skills, but it worked like many recent RPG games. The more I did an activity, the more skilled my character would get at it, which made a good deal of sense. Take night vision, for example. A rogue specializing as a thief or assassin might end up operating largely at night, so it made sense that their character's eyes would improve in the dark over time. For me, in the here and now, it meant I could just make out the outline of a squat figure I hadn't seen before. Its hunched humanoid form marked it clearly as a kobold. The kobold had its back to me as it ferreted around among the low-growing plants. I approached as silently as I could, drawing my dirt. Shroomy shrooms, the kobold went on, sniffing eagerly. Ah, it said, satisfied. The sound of munching followed. I admit I found the kobold oddly cute up close and in person. In most of the Let's Plays, the streamers just barreled through this early quest in daylight, slaughtering at will. It was a nice touch that the game's AI gave even these lowly mobs some personality. No wonder this game was drawing in players by the millions. Cute or not, however, I had a quest to fulfill. I raised my dirk and pounced, driving the dull blade as best I could in the kobold's back. Brittle dirk hits, 15 piercing damage, plus 30 sneak attack bonus. Alright, so he has attacked. So, I did not opening this efficiently. Alright, let's see what one of these tastes like. I'm supposed to shake it first. I'm supposed to serve it cold. It's not really cold, but I don't think it's going to matter when it goes down. Alright, bottoms up. These are kind of cute little glasses. I may keep this. It's not as horrible as it could be. It's also not as great as it could be. Alright. The kobold squealed, dropped the mushrooms it had been eating, and scrambled to draw its wooden club. A coating of blood lined my dagger, but the kobold darted around as though unfazed. That's VR gaming for you. Occasionally a bit of realism gets dropped. If you want to properly cripple an enemy, you better use the right spell, ability, or item that will cause them to move slower or burst out in boils or whatever. I jabbed again at the kobold and scored a much weaker hit, but my combined blows had brought its health down from 80 to 25. So, if you haven't guessed yet, this is going to be a rapid-fire drinking episode. Getting number 2. And bottoms up. Alright. The kobold swung its club at me, and my lowly level 1 avatar couldn't avoid the blow. Although I did manage to stick my dirk into its chest at the same time. It recoiled from my stab, and I struck again before it could raise its club. My enemy's health flashed, disappeared, and the mob died. Technically, I should have taken 2 shots here. So I will, I don't know, I will probably take another drink at the next thing I read, because I only have 1 of these left. I could switch to something else, but it's so late in the reading I kind of don't want to, and I'm taking these like really quickly back to back. So this is the last one. That was actually also the end of the sample. I think this is a pretty unique concept of a crafting profession. I actually think this might eventually play out well in an actual game too, because I've never seen this in a game where you would just scavenge and kind of profit from that. But if things did transfer into actual real world money, it would make sense. And it's kind of funny because I'm like the type of gamer where I pick up everything, but on the other hand, my boyfriend, when we like loot stuff, he leaves a lot of stuff behind. So I can see how this would actually work. Anyway, bottoms up for the last one. Anyway, guys, again, that was a Battle Spire, a crafting lit RPG book by Michael R. Miller. And I thought it was very, very well written. That sample was very good. I hope you guys have a good day, a good night, a good weekend, whatever time it is that you're watching this. And I will see you next time.